At the KSMO studio, it's time for our spotlight on the Salem Memorial District Hospital, also known as the Salem Memorial Hospital, SMH. Now, I'm still getting used to that. And we have hospital CEO Reid with us today. First off, sir, good to see you.
Good to be seen.
And, yeah, it is. And you've had an interesting month of February, a little breezy out there, isn't it?
Very windy.
Your first February in Missouri has been an interesting one.
Yeah, I've asked folks if it's normally this windy, and they've said no, it's not. So I don't know if I brought the wind or if it just showed up for me.
Don't know, but definitely has been a warmer February than normal. So so as you're saying, though, you might see February go out very meekly and see March come in roaring. We just don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah, just don't know. March can be a very interesting time in Missouri.
So when we were talking about the cornhole tournament back at the fall last year, I said I don't know if when it comes in March if it's going to be springtime or if it's going to be snow, and they said it could be.
Yeah,
either one.
Same day.
Could be.
Same day.
Yeah,
you might have it. We've had days start out with snow and went to 70 degrees, and it's the craziest thing you can see. But anyway, we did have a board of directors meeting on Tuesday, and there was a lot of different things discussed. Obviously, I understand went about an hour and a half or so, and so a lot of different things going on at the hospital. We know. And so first off, though, let's just really quickly, the month was a very busy one in January for the month for Salem Memorial Hospital. Very busy with patients. Swing beds were extremely high.
Yep.
The clinic was busy. Pretty much everything in the hospital was above or over budget as far as income is concerned. I mean, everything, the numbers were skyrocketing high, weren't they?
Yep, they're very good, very solid. So I like to think that that's, there's a lot of things that we're doing at the hospital. We're trying to drive volume. We want to make sure that people know that we're here and that if they need, we don't want them to be ill, but if they are, we want them to be able to trust us. And I think that our volumes would demonstrate that people are trusting us.
Well, we've had a few things we got a few things to talk about. Obviously, there's still some issues that we're correcting, and we all know about those. The 1095 issue, you might want to talk a little bit about that. People may not be familiar with it. 1095 is an IRS form, and it's forms that have to be filled out to explain to employees and sometimes even employers the insurance issue, right?
Right.
So tell us a little bit about how that has affected the hospital.
So right now it hasn't affected us yet.
Okay. Or could affect the hospital.
The way it could affect us. And so what I did with this list is I wanted to make sure that there was, there's a list of things that have been sort of hanging out there since well before I got here and before RHG got here that that could still come back to haunt us. So I wanted to make sure that everybody was still aware of that and that we're still aware of it and we're watching it and we're looking.
These are cautions.
Yeah, cautionary things.
Okay.
So
flashing yellow light out there, right?
Yeah. So back before I got here, and I want to say it was in 21, 19, and so coming into 20 and 20 going into 21, we are supposed to file a 1095 form that declares that we have told our employees that they can validate that they had insurance when they file their taxes. We did those things, but what we didn't do is we didn't alert the IRS, which is part of the requirement. And so they have been for some time threatening to fine us, and we have been in for well over a year. Negotiating with the IRS and pleading our case to the IRS that there was only a technical foul, that we actually did what we were supposed to do. We just didn't alert them, and I think through COVID and through some other changes in the IRS, they've been sort of distracted. So we've been going back and forth demonstrating to them that yes, we did file and yes, we did respond to them, and so right now we suspect that we will get those fines waived, but they could still come back.
So just as a precaution, you're just making everybody aware this could happen.
Yep.
Could happen. Hopefully it will not.
Hopefully it will not. And we're working to it to try to make sure that it does.
Sure, absolutely. Now, the Cerner conversion, I think people remember from a couple of years back, there was the big talk, we're going to convert over the Cerner system. And there was a lot of issues that the hospital had in making that conversion. And then Cerner sold, and that made even a bigger problem out of what was already kind of a mess. It really became a real big mess.
So when RHG came in, one of the things that they did, there were several functional things that they needed to do. One of, as it related to Cerner, one was that because of the Cerner installation, it was way impacting our cash flow. So we were watching cash flow drop off. and Cerner was having a big negative impact on the operations of the hospital, and it was going to be an expensive conversion, and it was going to be expensive to upkeep. So in that conversion, in that transition from into RHG, the board and RHG decided to cancel that contract. So we canceled the contract, and we feel like that there won't be any reason for Cerner to come back at the hospital, but it hasn't been completely resolved yet. So it's still out there, and we just we don't want any surprises in the event that it does come back.
All right, the lab survey. We had a lab survey come in, and Melissa Carter, the new girl that you told me I needed to meet, and I did.
Did you?
Yeah, she actually came and did her interview. She was a little nervous.
She's delightful.
She is. She's very nice, very sharp, and we had a nice conversation. She says, "This is what I do. I come in and I fix things." And she goes, "And that's what I'm doing. I'm fixing things." And I just like the way she's not going to beat around the bush. Whatever's wrong, we're going to fix it.
Yep.
And we're going to get it right. And I understand that she has taken that protocol from the survey and has corrected.
So we've had several people that have worked on that. Melissa's obviously the lead for that, but Angela, our new director of quality, spent a huge amount of time working on that, and so that we could demonstrate to the surveyors that the things that they found, and I want to say also that a lot of the things that they found we actually had, but because they came in the first week or so that Angela was here, she just couldn't put her hands on it. She just couldn't find it. Yeah. So, but they require that you be able to respond to them quickly, and we failed to be able to do that. But so one of the things that she's doing is she's demonstrating, A, that we have those things, B, that if we didn't have them the way they wanted them, we're getting them the way they want them, and then finally, we're demonstrating that for anything that they had concerns about, we can also demonstrate that there was no downstream harm for that. So we've spent hours and hours and hours and generated thousands of pages of documentation for them to demonstrate to them that we had a safe and effective lab during that time.
Yeah, very good. And it's hard to imagine how much paperwork is involved. Even though we always had this Paperwork Reduction Act of 1980, I said, what the biggest farce I ever saw in my life, because all the paperwork that was in it took 5 or 6 trees.
Yeah. Whenever I heard that we went paperless, I should have gone and bought stock in paper.
You should have, yeah.
Because we generate a lot of it.
And if you do it paperless and it doesn't work, you're guilty. So you have to print it all out anyway. So
and that's what we've done. So a lot of this was electronic, and some of it was that we just couldn't put our hands on it electronically. So in my experience, to your point about the Paperwork Reduction Act, whenever you have a surveyor, there's certain documents that you just need to have on hand.
That's right.
That's easy to get to, and we just didn't have that. And we had the documents, we just didn't have them easy to get to, and that's one of the things that Melissa's putting together.
Okay, so very good. So we're in the middle of making these changes, which is always great, and we've gotten things going in the right direction, which is always good to do. So we still got a kitchen drain issue.
Yes, sir.
It's not going to be cheap, is it?
No, sir, it's not. But the first return that we heard was it was going to be between $400,000 and $500,000 to resolve the kitchen drain issue. And that's just for the drain. That doesn't include any of the ongoing cost of operations. Wow. Because we'll have to figure out some way to have a remote kitchen, or we'll have to find somebody to provide meals, or we'll have to do something because we won't have dishwashing facilities during that month or so that it will take to get that done. So there will be other additional cost of operations that will go on top of that. So, and we'll know more about that over the coming weeks as we get, we'll put that out to bid, so that, because you can't seek financing, you can't seek funding for it, you can't seek anything until you know exactly what you're trying to do. Sure. So we're going to have to work with some contractors to get the bids for that.
Any idea how long that would take to correct?
About a month. We're expecting it to be about a month.
That's a major project.
It is.
And that pipe has been in there a long time.
It has been in there a long time, and it's sort of like new cars. They weren't built to be serviced. They were built to be built.
No. And was that an old clay pipe?
I don't know. Actually, I don't think it was a clay pipe. I think it was some sort of a composite pipe, and through years of putting carbonated beverages and other things through that drain, it just ate it. It just ate it out.
Over time. If it's any kind of metal, that carbonation, it won't last. It won't last.
Yeah.
And
it did last.
Well, I know, but it won't last forever.
Yeah.
And the funny part about that is when they go, there's no warning. They just go. Everything collapses, and all of a sudden you have a backup, and you don't have any idea why.
Yeah, and so we're The good news is that Todd and his team have taken good care of the building to the degree that they can.
Sure.
There's just certain things that are infrastructure things, sort of like the transformer.
Sure.
You can't maintain a transformer.
No.
We got all the life out of that. But
Time takes its toll, doesn't it? Just takes
it
its toll.
sure does.
I get you. We were working on an architect for the clinic. Has that been put on hold?
No, it's not on hold. We're still going through it. We'll send that out for bid as well. We're also looking for any kind of grant funding that we can do to put that in place.
Okay, very.
And that'll stream when the clinic was built. It was obviously, even to my eyes, built for two separate practices, one on the left and one on the right.
It was, yeah.
And so now it's clear that we don't have two separate practices. We have one big clinic, and so we'll be combining registration so that we can make that a little better, and then update the front appeal of the hospital, and then sort of change some of the workflow in the back to make it a little better.
At the time it was built, you actually had two different physician office buildings holding different doctors, and
Yep.
then when they moved them all together, then they kind of separated that.
Yeah, you can't easily walk from one side of the clinic to the other.
Not yet. But
But
we're going to get there, right?
we'll get there.
We're going
We'll
to
get
get
there.
there. We're going to get there.
So I will say that yesterday we had 107 patients in that clinic. That's spectacular.
Well, I know they wanted to get over 100. That's good.
So we're at 107 patients over the clinic. We've got the new jail contract, and they're assisting
Right.
with that. So the clinic is doing great things, and that's helping drive the other
Sure.
volume that we're
We're
seeing.
going to talk about that here in just a minute, but also the weekend hours have helped as well. They've been very busy and well received.
We had 16 patients on Saturday. That's and I think that wasn't anywhere near what we were expecting in our ramp rate. So it's the response from the community has been wonderful.
And it's a lot more, I will say, you don't have that workday pressure trying to get back in time, you know.
Yep.
Got that Saturday, you can go in at 9 o'clock, and if you don't get in till 10 because they're really busy, well, that's okay too.
Yep.
But if they aren't busy, you're going to get in 5 to 8 minutes.
Yep, and I will say that one of the things that I'm very pleased with is when I got here, you would come through the clinic and you'd see a group of people, and I'd go and visit and do my rounds, and then I would come out and you'd see sort of the same people, and then more. Now we're seeing sort of a flow of patients coming through the clinic, and it's flowing better. Christy and the team have done a phenomenal job. All the providers that we've added are doing great work to be able to make sure that we can get folks in and seen appropriately.
Very good. Very good. Sounds good. Do we have any more surveys coming up of any way, shape, or
So
form
I
that
think-
you know of?
so I think
there's
that
always surprise ones from the state.
Yeah,
You know that.
I think the surveys that we're anticipating, we probably will have one for respiratory in the summer, and then any day now we'll get our rural health clinic, the clinic survey that's due any day.
Okay.
And Christy's been working to make sure that everything's in arm's reach.
Very good. Very good. All right. So, obviously, our finance committee, they're going to meet, but we just got a new secretary. So, Judy Thompson was named for that. So, they're going to be probably putting those dates together. Plus, you have a new CFO. And who is our new CFO?
Our CFO is William Giles. He joins us most recently from Mississippi. He's had a history working in critical access hospitals. He's helped turn a lot of hospitals around financially, and he's got some good experience, and he's been very complimentary of the team that he's found here. He's been here a little over a week and has started to meet the team, and we're working him through it.
And got thrown to the fire at the first meeting, didn't he?
The first meeting. But he actually got to present a pretty good financials the first.
Yes, he did. Very good. But good to be able to find out a good CFO. They're hard to find.
Yeah.
That you can.
We were
really-
blessed.
Yeah.
We've been blessed in being able to recruit here.
So he'll be working with the finance committee, putting that budget together. And here's the issue. We know that COVID had just totally discombobulated all records and the validity of those records because nobody knew what was going on. So basically, last year and the transition of last year is not going to help either.
No.
So you're going to have basically 3 years of records that are going to be so skewed, Wayne, that it's going to be very difficult
Can't trust
for
them.
the budget committee and Mr. Giles to put together to really have an accurate forecast budget. But they're going to do the best they can in looking at the numbers and seeing where the trends are now, aren't they?
So we've already talked to all the leaders in the facility and told them to be thinking about what are the things that are going to impact your volumes next year. Do you anticipate new service lines starting in this area? Do you expect to see increased cost because of supply utilization Is there anything that's going to impact you from where you are currently to where you need to be? And then are there any capital needs that you have so that we can sort of put those together? And William's going to work with each of the directors and each of the managers to make sure that they understand their budget and understand what they're doing. So they will actually help compel that. I think that particularly when you don't have a trend that you can look at, so you can't do a trend-based budget. We're really doing a zero-based budget. We're going back to zero, and everybody's going to have to earn what they've got.
Like starting over. Basically, that's what
starting
you're going to
over.
be doing. But it was nice to see what we are seeing in the last couple of months with the hospital.
That has been very,
had been
very promising.
Very good, very good. All right, strategic planning update.
We're still working through the strategic planning process, and that will take weeks.
Okay.
It'll take weeks.
And with everything else going on, obviously, we can't donate a lot of time just to that. All right, well, we're very, very good. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the bylaws. All right, 'cause I know there's some discussion in the bylaws. They're adding mid-level staff and stuff, and they're trying to get maybe a good definition of that or how it's going to work with the hospital, because that's not something that Salem Hospital has currently, correct?
So we had medical staff bylaws.
No, I meant the middle part.
Yeah, we've always
Mid-level.
had mid levels.
Okay.
The question was, how do we address those from the medical staff?
Okay.
So when we put the bylaws together, first of all, this process started before I got here. And it actually started before RHG got here. The bylaws hadn't been updated to current state for a very long time.
Over 20 years.
So and I think they may have been confirmed and reconfirmed over time, but they hadn't been rewritten. And healthcare and rules of hospital operations has changed a great deal in that time. So they did what I would have done. They went to the Missouri Hospital Association and they found their model bylaws, and then they modified the model bylaws to match what we do. So they did that both for the hospital bylaws and for the medical staff bylaws. So the medical staff bylaws were adapted from, and Mark Weaver worked on those, and those were adopted from the MHA bylaws, and they were adopted with the exception of there was some concerns because in the old bylaws they didn't specifically address mid-levels. And the physicians were concerned about that because the physicians want to make sure that when we use mid-levels we use them appropriately.
Okay.
And so they said we don't have mid-levels in the hospital, and I reminded them that we have CRNAs in the hospital. So we adjusted the bylaws to allow for the CRNAs. Okay. I think that we need to make sure that we address mid-levels in the bylaws. But I also had another compelling time frame because we had to have these bylaws approved for the plan of correction from when the state was here.
Sure.
So the state said you need to have new bylaws, so we wrote them and we got them approved. And what my intent has always been, let's get those approved, let's get what they're comfortable with, and then we can come back and readdress mid-levels as appropriate so that we can make sure that the physicians are comfortable with that. Then when we got to the board remembered from early on in the engagement with RHG that they wanted to expand the use of mid-levels as supports for physicians.
Oh, okay.
So they knew that. Right. And so the board was reticent to approve that with the limited discussion of mid-levels in the bylaws. So they did agree to do that, and they gave us 60 days to use these bylaws. Their concern was if we hadn't updated them in 20 years, that we wouldn't get back to it.
Yeah.
So they put a time frame on it, and we'll get back with the medical staff and with and the board. And I talked to AJ yesterday, and we're going to put together a team to sit down and talk through that so that we can get both sides together to make sure that we have appropriate representation for mid-levels.
And get the proper wording of the article that you need for mid-level, and then it will address all those needs.
Yep. Make sure that everybody's because again, I think there was concern because they hadn't needed to have that forever. They felt like, well, now they do, and so there was concern about why suddenly do we need that now. So,
I get it. So I mean, of course, I wasn't able to attend. I was up in St. Clair at a basketball game. Sorry. Yeah.
It happens.
Hey, they won.
Well, that's good. That's good.
So hey, I was glad I went, but But it was a little bit confusing because I knew the bylaws had to be redone. I wasn't very familiar with the mid-level at all myself, and
So-
I had actually read those, and I remember I said, "Well, I thought we had a mid-level."
We
but
do.
I didn't,
So, and really
didn't understand that.
the medical staff the medical staff doesn't credential anybody, the board does.
Right.
So the medical staff recommends for credentialing, and then they validate the credentials of people to be recommended to the board. Sure. And really all that statement did, it didn't say we were going to have them, it didn't say how we were going to do them. All it did was address how physicians would assist in the credentialing of mid-levels that came onto the practice. And so we'll work through that, and
Well, that makes sense.
it'll work
and it's
out.
a needed piece.
It is.
Obviously.
In America today,
Yeah,
it is a needed
yeah.
piece.
And to make sure that, first off, and you want to make sure that the board, they don't know enough about all the distinctive things that is going on. So for them to get the recommendation from the
Well-
medical staff, then they have to feel pretty confident about that.
Yep.
Very good. All right. Well, let's go into some of the numbers. I just so people know, we were talking about how busy the hospital was. Just for last year, we had 286 inpatient census days. That was 458. That's almost twice.
Yep.
About 80%.
Yep.
That's a lot. And then you look at the acute care patients per day, 14.8. We actually had to turn some patients away.
We actually had to, and it kills me as an administrator that we couldn't provide that need. But the reason we had to turn them away is because, not because we couldn't care for them because we couldn't, it was because we didn't have room in the inn.
Right.
And if you're going to have a problem, that's a good problem to have.
So the med surge length of stay wasn't too far off normal, 4.41 days, but the swing bed at 17.73. Wayne, I've never seen that number ever.
That's a healthy number for a swing bed program.
Yes, and so good to see that in there. And of course, when you start talking about those kind of numbers, 195 in the inpatient census days in swing bed versus 38 last January,
Yep.
huge difference.
So I'm, to your point earlier about COVID sort of skewing things, it's really hard for me to get solid numbers that I can trust, but I've talked to folks anecdotally, and they can't remember a time when we have had this level of sustained census and sustained clinic volume, and that's a testament to the team that's working that.
Right. Outpatient registrations were pretty close to normal, but there was a lot of tests. Cardiopulmonary was up. Lab tests were about normal, a little bit, just about where they were last year. But radiological procedures up, rehabs up a little bit. It's good to see all that. Rehabs are basically like a month or 2 months behind because that's after somebody has a surgery. So you can't just look at that number and say, "Oh my gosh, why can't they go do more?" There's a reason. But everything makes sense when you look at the report. Everything falls in line, doesn't it?
So it's part of a plan coming together. We wanted to increase our activity and the confidence in our clinic and grow our clinic volume and get our providers busy, and that has gone very well. Then that helps to drive our outpatient revenue. Our ER and our clinic absolutely helps drive our volume in our hospital. Having a focus on swing beds that we've done has helped grow that swing bed volume. So each piece of that, working together. And then our home health volume is up.
It's up too.
So our home health, and so connecting the dots from the time that the patient, so that whole continuum of care, from the time that they come into the clinic or the ER where they get admitted, then they get admitted, and then if they're not ready to go home, then we get them to the swing bed so that we can get them recovered better. Then when we get them home, we cover them with home health so that they stay home. Right. So that whole continuum of care, I think we're doing a good job of connecting those dots together to help that.
They need rehab, the hospital there for that too. One of the things that I noticed in some of the stats, though, with the ED was busy, very busy, but the ambulance runs were exceptional in January. 279, in which we had some days in January you couldn't get out.
You couldn't
drive.
move.
Yeah. And I thought that was quite a bit with 196 patients being transported. Still about 70-30 when it comes to figuring that all out. But that's a lot of ambulance runs.
That's a lot of ambulance runs.
Wow. And that's a busy time. And, of course, when the weather's that bad and you have those ambulances and you just got them.
I hold my breath.
But as far as the balance sheet was concerned, it's pretty solid.
Yep.
Everything looks good. I looked at the income. We had a little bit of a loss from operations, but we were able to recover that with the tax money that came in.
So I will say that when our CFO came in, and he's had the blessing of coming into some places that were struggling and helped them recover, he feels very confident at where we are today. He, again, not completely out of the woods, and as I think I shared with you one time, our hope is to get to the point where we are as terrified as every other critical access hospital in the country, because it is so hard to operate, and so we're still in a little bit of a hole. But it's always going to be tough business in rural healthcare.
Revenue for inpatient was over $1 million. I can't remember when that happened. $1.2 million, $900,000 was budgeted. Last year was $900,000. Been quite a long time for I remember that being that way. And then the outpatient numbers up as well. And so when you look at that, then I actually looked at the clinical numbers, and that's incredible to see that amount of increase in revenue off the clinic.
The clinic was up 50% in volume over their budget.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that at all. Very good. Days cash on hand. You still would like to have more cash on hand, but you're still addressing a number of different issues. It's costing money.
Yep. Well, and the other thing that happens is that at the end of the year, there's always things that come due at the end of the year. There's always a December, January push that drives up expenses. At the end of the year, there's additional insurance payments. There's all sorts of stuff that happen at the end of the year. So those are sort of behind us, and if we can continue to maintain our strong volume numbers, then this will help us a lot.
Sometimes at Christmas, you're thinking Christmas is great, and then you get to the end of the year and you start making all those adjustments. You're like,
no, it's not as fun as you think.
I know,
if you look at that's our month-to-date cash on hand. I think if you go back to 2018, in 2018 we were actually worse.
Oh yeah.
Our cash on hand isn't where I'd like it to be, but I think we sort of had a false sense of security because we had all those COVID dollars in the last, and that was sort of not. I would say that's not exactly real numbers that you can depend on.
No, and I would have to say those were encumbered dollars to begin with. You're going to have to pay them back.
Yep.
And so, your cash on hand may look like you have a lot of cash, but that's not your money. And that's actually money that you're forfeiting for future payments down the road to have right now. That's not a good sense of security to know that with that money.
And I will say that it was not uncommon in America, particularly, well, I would say not even in smaller hospitals, in big hospitals. They assumed that money was going to be forgiven, and they would just and they kept their promise and had to pay it back. And there's a lot of places that
we're still struggling.
Really struggling. And so the fact that this hospital went through the crisis that it did and has paid that back and is recovering is a testament to the people there.
Absolutely. And now, if he hadn't paid it back by last September, there is a fine involved or an interest penalty.
A big penalty.
And that continues. And if you haven't been able to pay it off yet, you're still paying a huge amount of what I always kind of call just fog money, because that's money you earned hard. You're giving away as interest or as a penalty. You don't see anything out of that.
Yep.
Fog. Just all it does is blind things.
It's like roofing your house.
Yeah.
It costs a lot of money, and it's not exciting.
One of the things that shows up, and for any of those people, remember the board of directors meetings are open to the public, and there's a lot of people in there. They had a lot of the physicians that go in there from the clinic, and they're there. There's also hospital staff that sometimes show, as well as people from RHG, yourself, all the board directors. There was a 12-week cash burn. Now, this is something that's new to our packet. I haven't had a chance to visit with you about this, because last time you were here, you were in and out like a flash. Flash. But explain why this is important, because right now with the way the hospital has had to review their cash situation so critically, why is this important for the board to know?
So there are two different ways to sort of monitor the health of an organization. If you have a normal organization that is not going through a crisis, the normal way that you would do that is you just look at the financials. Right. And you'd base where you are and how you're doing based on the financial performance of the hospital. Yeah. there's
monthly or quarterly.
Monthly,
Normally is
quarterly.
what
You
would
look
do.
at that,
Right.
and you're fine.
Sure.
You can sort of weather any storm because you've got cash on hand and all that works. There's two issues with that. First, our financials are still problematic. We still, to your point about going through COVID, and we had some issues with our financials anyway. It's really difficult for us to make a good assessment of whether or not those financials are good predictors of the health of the organization. We don't ignore them, but we want to make sure that they're good. For instance, I know that right now we have our depreciation above the line, and in most places you pull depreciation because it's not a cash thing below the line. Right. And so we'd be following EBITDA, and our new CFO is going to probably put us on a model where we watch that so that it pulls that cash above the line, and we're just looking at what our cash flow is. Mm-hmm. So the first thing that we look at is our financials. Since those are skewed, that makes it difficult. Plus, because we were in such dire straits a year ago, right, we're watching cash. We want to make sure that our cash flow into the hospital is matching our cash flow out of the hospital and that we are not behind. And, we've talked a lot about the cost report and that we get a pickup, and every critical access hospital in America does this. They sort of run a little below the line every month, and then they get, at the end of the year, they get there because they've lost money, right, and because critical access hospitals get reimbursed on their cost. We usually get a pickup at the end of the year, and that pickup sort of helps us carry out to the next year. Well, we've not had that, so we're trying to monitor our cash flow to make sure that our cash burn and our days on hand doesn't drop below a critical value, so that we can continue to operate the hospital. So we're watching every cash. I look at the cash every day, right. And what this cash flow does is it looks at what our cash burn is, and our cash burn has been, I want to say it's in the 40 a week, On average, we have some good weeks, and then payroll comes in, and then
you're going to have collections great one week and not so good the next.
Yep. But so we watch that, and then so we've taken our cash on hand, and based on that, we can project out that we're probably, if nothing changes, which I suspect there will be some good things that will change, we've got cash to last out 2 years, and that's important for us because
Absolutely.
That's important for us because that next cost report will be along about this time next year. Right. So instead of having to pay, which we had to do this year, next year we should look to get that back up, and that gets us back into balance. So if we can weather this and watch that, then we will get, it will get us in a more favorable position for going into 23 and 24.
I do the same thing with our business, and that's why I was wondering how this was being interpreted and used. But also, you're going to find if you do this over a period of 2 or 3 years, you're going to know exactly when your biggest collections are going to come in. So if you have to buy something, yep, you don't have to buy it first of the month, and maybe you don't get collections till the 20th. And somewhere around the 25th, you put that order in and you can get it. And now you've got the cash to pay for it.
And you do the same thing around capital expenditures. Mm-hmm. So okay, here's some capital expenditures we're going to have to spend. We're going to have to spend $20,000 on this motorized bed for the ambulance, and so we know that's coming. So we'll be able to time that so that we know that when the cash collections are there.
And people don't understand. Well, yeah, you're going to get the money anyway. Yes, but if on a cash basis, if the cash isn't there and you need to have that cash, you're in trouble.
Yep.
Because you've already paid the bill. You've done your due diligence to make sure that you're going to have the money, but some other people don't worry about getting you the money that they owe you.
That is correct.
And so that puts you in kind of a little bit of a quandary. But I think it's a great report. I didn't have a chance to say anything at the meeting, but I was going to tell you personally, I thought that's really a nice report to have because you can follow everything. And then you can go back to a month, and then you can see where the month is, and then the quarter, because 12 weeks is a quarter. So you can see the whole thing with one picture.
So one of the things that is difficult for a hospital is that a lot of the time, you close, so your month ends January the 31st. You don't close. Your close isn't done until middle to end of February.
Sure.
And by that time, well, there's nothing you can do about what happened back in January. It's really just evidence of the scene of the crime. If you weren't operating well in January, by the time you find out about it in February, it can be too late to correct it. Mm-hmm. If you're watching your cash flow every day, and you're watching your volumes every day, and you're watching your clinic volumes every day, and you're watching your collectibles every day, and you're looking at your billables, and you're looking at your coding to make sure that your coding is going out, then you don't have those issues with revenue cycle sneaking up on you.
Right.
We watch our revenue cycle every day now. And I know that was an issue before.
And I was just going to bring it up. That was a major issue before because they were having billing issues, the coding issues, and then when you send the wrong codes, the insurance company, you don't get paid.
Nope.
Or Medicare.
Or you get underpaid.
Or you get underpaid.
And they're excited about that.
Yeah,
they'll happily underpay you.
Without hesitation. They might even pay that one quicker.
So Jennifer Smith and her group have done yeoman work at working through that process. And so, our cash collections on a day have been over 100,000 for most days for the last several weeks. I reported out to the board last week, we had a phenomenal cash collection week. We had almost $670,000 of cash collections last week, and that was all on patient collectibles. So that wasn't a tax increase.
Right.
That wasn't our tax payment. That was all on cash collection. So, and that's what happens when you have a strong November, December. That stuff starts paying in February.
Yeah, people don't realize you don't get paid right away. Medicare is not real quick about it.
And insurers
are even worse.
Yep.
Yeah, they like that 120 days.
They do.
You have to pay your premium on time.
Right now.
By the time that those commercial insurers pay, it may be 120 to 150 days.
Yep.
Before you get paid.
Yeah. So
there's no interest that you get on that money, by the way.
But I will say that the more aggressive you are and the more intentional you are about dropping bills, the faster they pay. Mm-hmm. So our time to pay right now is 55 days, but a lot of that is still because we still have a lot of that bad debt that we've been preserving that we're going to write off. So we were up in the 70s, now we're in the 50s, and if you look at our commercial right now is around 34, 35 days. So we are doing a very good job of getting things coded, billed, and out.
And followed up on.
Yeah.
And that's the big key. You don't follow up.
Because if you don't, because it's one thing to provide the service, but if you don't turn that service provision into cash, then you don't operate very long.
Right. Well, very good. All right, very good. But that's a great report, by the way. So whoever came up with that idea, whether if it was yours,
no, that's an RHG report.
Well, very good, and I always find these so valuable because it's a quarter, it's a month, and a week. You can see the whole thing in one snapshot if you really want to look.
And that's one of the things and I can't speak to how we were doing it before I got here, but I like to have sort of like a dashboard on an airplane. I need to see all the gauges so that I can tell if the plane is flying right, if I've got enough fuel to get to my destination,
that's kind of
if
important.
the engine's running too hot. I can look at all of those things and see the health of the and so we're working to get more tools like that so that me and my team can look at that and determine where we are at any given moment so that we know what the health of the organization is. We know whenever we have to sort of squeeze up and conserve, and we know when we can be a little more liberal.
It's kind of like the hole in the dam. It's just a trickle right now, but if you let it keep going, and all of a sudden it becomes a stream, and then it breaks.
It doesn't take maliciousness, and it doesn't take huge incompetence to have that happen. It can be just little things. If you take your eye off of your staffing just a little bit, by the time you get to the end of the month, you could have way overpaid and not provide the services you needed, and then you never get that. It's back to that fluff money you were talking about. You just never get it back.
Speaking of some staffing, Ashley Sullins gave her report, and there's still some open positions for nurses.
Couple.
And we have a one night RN and med surg and ED, and a day shift for med surg as well. So there's still some openings if you're a nurse or know somebody.
Yeah, if you know somebody, please send them our way. But a couple of, and you'll see on the next page or so, there's a chart that shows some FTEs, or if that, I don't remember where it was in the, but one of the things that we did was when we saw our peak go up and we saw our census go up, we didn't have the functional staffing to support them, so we supported them through very expensive labor, which is a good thing to do in the short term, but it's not a good long-term strategy. So what we've done is we've sort of assessed. Now we know that's not a trend. We know that's not that's not an accident. It's a trend. So we're going to reach out and start hiring some folks so that we can continue to support that high level of census without having to pay additional premium pay and burn our staff down.
Right, and contractual nursing and techs and everything
bad
else.
language.
And and you got them on a quarterly basis. You don't hire them for a day.
No.
It's either a quarter, or half year, or full year, is it not?
It's usually 16 weeks.
16 weeks.
Yeah.
So basically 4 months.
Yep.
All right, very good. They went over the communicable disease report, and which she does very well.
Yep.
And then the human resource update, Jody came in and gave that a couple new hires in in the pharmacy department, a couple techs.
A couple of techs, and we're excited about that. And I will say that one of the blessings that we have here, and other hospitals in America are not seeing this, is that with a couple of exceptions, we have been very blessed at being able to recruit staff. And so we're going to work on the culture of the hospital so that it becomes the premier place to work in this region, and so that we can continue to keep that staffing up. But that has helped us a lot. And our ability, and Jody's work and Vanessa's work, to interview those folks and to get those folks is very helpful.
And, whenever you have somebody leave, and people are going to move on and change jobs, and that's going to happen. They do get an exit interview so that whatever their suggestions, maybe they have something for it and say, hey, the only reason I left was this. Or, hey, they're offering me something I just can't turn down.
Yeah.
It's good to know why somebody's leaving, instead of just saying, hey, I quit and walk out the door.
So we do exit interviews on everybody that leaves. And the good news is we don't have a whole lot of folks that leave. And so we've committed to the board that we will give them a report that tells the nature of the reasons that we're having turnover. And we're going to do that quarterly, because if we do it every month, people here know everybody, and they might be able to determine somebody's personal data just by figuring it out. So that's why we're going to do it every quarter. It sort of compiles those together. It'll be so we'll be able to get the information we need and that the board would like, and not reveal anybody's personal information.
Put somebody out there on it. I always kind of call it on that surf wave. You're up here and everybody sees you.
Yeah.
We
want to be respectful.
Yeah, absolutely. And many times it's nothing wrong. It's just that they have an opportunity to advance. Why would you stop somebody?
I would never stop. I would never stop.
Yeah.
Or their life changed. And they don't need to be.
Or maybe they're going to retire.
Or they retire, or there's any number of reasons that are positive reasons for leaving an organization.
Very good. Anyway, and Jody does a tremendous job in keeping on that straight. She's very, very good at her job in human resources. So, very good. All right, we got Hospital Foundation. Let's talk a little bit about. We got a cornhole tournament that's going to be here in just like 2.5 weeks.
2 weeks, something like that.
Holy cow!
And I think we've sold $1 billion worth of tickets for this, or something like that. It's a big pile of money. Every time I turn around, we're selling more tickets for the raffle for that gun. So if you want to get that rifle, 6.5 Creedmoor, bolt action. Looks nice to me. Get your tickets.
Cornhole tournament will be at the community center in the Army. It will be inside.
So regardless of the weather.
And it is climate controlled in there.
That's correct.
Years ago, people say, well, that old Armory was always hot or cold. Not anymore.
Not anymore.
It's all controlled. Matter of fact, they just put new walls up. And now it's even nicer, a little warmer, a little cooler. You don't have those concrete walls there, those tile walls. Now it's a lot nicer. So very good. So check that out. Also, with the cornhole tournament, you have an opportunity to still sign up. You can still get on there.
Yep.
So
we need teams.
You can contact Clifton Parker if you'd like to do that. Clifton Parker's number 647-9338. I didn't figure you knew that number off the top of my head. You got enough stuff going on.
I don't know my number off the top of my head.
Very good. But we still have a golf tournament coming up. And for a lot of previous sponsors, you should have gotten a letter, correct?
They did. We sent those out already, and we've already gotten some sponsorships back.
Okay. So, if you would like to be a sponsor of the golf tournament and you haven't done it in the past, or you haven't received a letter, call the hospital and they can get you one. It'll tell you all about what's going on.
Get your sponsor packet ready.
729-6626. Just ask for administration, and they'll be able to get that out to you.
Get it right out to you.
Absolutely. Very good. So we're still doing a lot of different good stuff in the community. I know Tiffin's working hard at being the community champion. She's been busy. There are a lot of different things going on. So what's the torch program that community champion is doing? She said we've accepted a letter of intent for the torch program.
So I'm I'm probably not the right person to ask that
Okay,
today because
so-
I don't remember.
Well, okay, so that might be something she's
Yeah,
very
she's familiar
with.
with, and I remember signing it, but I can't, to be honest with you, that was,
well,
you stumped me, Stan.
She'll be back in, I think, 3 weeks, so I'll ask her about
Ask her that one.
You know, but I did not know what the torch program was either. It said sign a letter of intent. I thought, well, should be a good program.
It is a good program,
It
or
says
I wouldn't have signed
potential
it.
for $3 million in year one, additional funding and Medicaid savings over
Yep.
years 2 and 3.
I don't remember.
I get it. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
A lot
goes
of stuff
on.
in there.
Absolutely, very good. And then there were a lot of reappointments made to
Yep.
the medical staff.
Yep.
All right. We had a few not reapplying. Okay, employee awards banquet
Coming up Friday night.
Friday night. And what kind of awards are going to be given out?
So it's our longevity records awards, and I'm sure we'll have some special things there. The thing I'm most excited about is it's a prom night theme, and so you can use your prom theme or somebody else's. And I'm telling you, I've listened to a lot of ladies, and they are excited about that. So
I bet they are.
my wife is. I'm not sure she's excited about it, but we're or as excited about it as they are. But
Oh, very
we're
good.
ready.
So that's all I really have out of the report. Anything that you'd like to comment on? I mean, here at the end, as we have Wayne Reid with us, our CEO of Salem Hospital, and we are turning the corners, continually finding a few new things that have to be addressed. But all these things, they just take, first off, they take time and working out to make sure that you know exactly what it is before you do address it, because no sense in you taking a look at something hard and trying to figure it all out and then say, well, wait a minute, we have some more stuff to that. You got to go back.
Or worse, one of the things that is important to do when you're turning an organization is that usually there's a reason something was done. And you can look at it, I can look at it and go, well, that's not the way I'm used to seeing it. So the important thing is to make sure that you try to understand why it was done that way, because it may be actually fixing another problem that you don't know about. So you could go and make an easy fix in this area and actually cause another one that you don't intend to. So part of the thing about being systematic as you go through these is finding the issues, and some of those things are pretty easy and they're pretty straightforward and you fix them and you move on. But others of them, when you start untangling them, they're sort of tangled in with other things, and so we're working through that and finding those things.
And the input of your directors. How important is that to you every day?
It's vital. It's vital. I talk to folks. I spend most of my day out of my office wandering around talking to folks. Finding out
just
what-
wandering around.
Or just wandering around. Just wandering around.
Still looking for stuff.
Still
No,
looking for stuff. But I will say that the responsiveness, when I got here going on 6 months ago, I think my leadership team was a little reticent. They didn't, they'd been through a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And so when we started pulling them in the room together, they were a little quiet. And today I just, we have a morning meeting every day, and I left there and, people are jovial, upbeat. I walk in the room, and I hear chatter, and sometimes that chatter is between two colleagues who are working through trouble, and sometimes it's through two colleagues that are working through what they're going to do this weekend. But we're beginning to feel a team camaraderie in a way that is, I think, very helpful. And back to when we were preparing things for the lab survey. A lot of that record review required a lot of people, and so we sent up a flare and asked for folks, and we got wonderful response, and everybody came together to help pull through and do that records review. So I'm feeling that camaraderie, and so truly the things that we're seeing here are the results of the efforts of a huge amount of people who are doing an awful lot of hard work.
Transition's not easy. And when you make those transitions, you put people sometimes in a very uncomfortable position, because it's not that same old every day that I've had for the last 15 years. Now you're coming in, and all of a sudden this is different. This director's gone. This person's gone. Somebody's retired, and everything changes. But it doesn't mean it's changing for the bad.
No, and you could be dismissive, and I try really hard not to tell people that what they were doing was wrong. It's just not what we need to do today. And so, back to when we were talking about the medical staff bylaws, they were fine for when they were written, but things have changed. And the fact that we didn't update them, well, I can't do anything about that today, but we can make them right today.
Sure.
And we can make them relevant for the way we practice medicine today.
Now, I had a discussion with the gentleman who works for me here. We were talking about how the radio station runs. And I've been here a long time, okay? And I told him, I said, look, I'm a hardware guy. I can put anything, I can make anything work. You give me the hardware, I'll make it work. But when I have to go on a screen, do the software part, and I make a mistake, I don't know where to go back to. I don't know where to find that mistake. Here, I can visualize it, and I can systematically remove it, fix it, get it to work. Can't do that when I go on a computer. I mean, years ago, you got to remember, man, when I was in college, they were talking about DOS. Yeah, you're there too. I get you, buddy. So we grew up in a different environment. One file at a time, and you learn how to do flow charts, and you learn how to do all this good stuff. But when it comes to immediately going and seeing 72 different things show up on my screen at one time, I'm not comfortable with that.
Yep.
I can do it, but it's hard to focus on the one.
And I think that we don't want to minimize the effort that people have put into making this place be here, because if it had been all wrong, we wouldn't still have a hospital today.
No.
So there's things that we're working, and so what we're doing is we're capitalizing on our strengths. We're polishing up the places where we have room for we have opportunity for improvement, and then we're focusing in a different level and at a different intensity, and in my experience, Februaries are a tough month in hospitals, because you've come through the winter, and some of those illnesses are getting over. It's a short month, and it's also, as people have come into their new pay year, they haven't met their copays and deductibles, so they're a little sluggish to come in. So the fact that we are in February and today we have 18 people in our hospital. Now that's, I'm sad that there are people that need it, but I'm honored that they're choosing us to help take care of them. That was, I believe, done with, not by accident. That was done with intentionality and a good group of people who are pulling together.
And one of the interesting things that we have here is a great core group. And when that core group can work together and get things done, and I'm sure when you talk to them, if there's anything that you need, or there's some information that you need or request, they get it to you quickly because they need to get it addressed.
They do. And they have been very responsive. I think some have understood it better than others. But everybody is working really well together.
Fantastic.
And because I can tell you that there is no way that one person can come in and make a difference. It takes everybody to make this difference.
So I'm going to get off hospital for just a minute. I want to thank you first off for coming in and spending some time with us. But you do know the opening of trout season is next Wednesday.
No, I did not know that.
Okay, so I was wondering. I don't know if you're a trout fisherman or not.
I could be.
Well, okay, but at Montauk State Park,
okay,
there'll be a whole bunch of people down there, and if of course we have weather like this, the'll probably be
a whole lot more. Yeah,
but it is midweek. But it is the opening of trout season for Montauk, Bennett Spring, and Roaring River, or up at Merrimack Spring Park. You can go up there as well. But it's the opening of trout season, so I didn't know if you were aware of that. A lot of people who are fishermen. That's the beginning of spring.
I'm aware that there's a hospital about 8 minutes that way. That's pretty much what I'm aware of right now.
I know. But if you ever need that chance to get away and do a little fishing, Montauk would be a great place to go. And I wasn't sure if you were a fisherman or not. I wanted to throw that out there just in case you were, because that's like a holiday.
Yeah. Well, so the reason we moved here was not just for me to spend 60, 80 hours a week there. It's so that we could enjoy the property we bought. And the good news is that over the last couple of months, I've begun to see that there will be a time when I'll be able to enjoy the floating down the rivers here, skid steering my property, doing the stuff that I like to do. But it's going to take an investment, and we got a lot of people working really hard to make that happen.
Now, I know we're not going to probably. I'm not sure if we'll be here beforehand or not. I don't think so, because I think we'll be meeting on the 21st again in March. But for those, and I'm not sure if you're aware of the road rally. You know anything about the road rally? Okay, so you'll have ambulances there. So whether you know it or not,
I'm sure they'll be doing that.
But the road rally comes in town, and what they do is they run the county roads here. This is not your normal road rally. They actually run the county roads, and they shut them down.
What vehicles do they?
They're roadsters. They're actually road ready. They have to qualify for the road. Okay. And it's I'll get you more information when we get off the air. But that road rally is the weekend of we'll call it St. Patty's Day. So
Ah.
so that will be going on that day, and they do have spectator areas out there, and there's a lot of people, and our hospital's always been gracious to work with the coordinators of the event. Whether it was Kim Mott years ago, and it's grown on, and now I think we're in the 20th year since they brought it back, and so it's a big deal. And so I wanted to make you aware of that. Another local event that you're probably not all that aware of.
So my intention is to. So that's why I came here.
Yeah.
Was to enjoy is to enjoy all the things here. And when I interviewed here and when I rode around with AJ and we met folks, one of the things that was appealing to me is how much community activity here and how many community events. And I missed the first rodeo, and I want to be able to make that. And so as we get dialed in,
Sure.
and that will be exactly what I want to do.
Yeah, but
I'll be at the breakfast this Saturday.
The Rotary Pancake Breakfast. That is 7 to 11 at the Salem Middle School. You know where middle school is?
I will Saturday morning. By Saturday morning, I'll know where it is.
Yeah. It's not too far from the hospital, so you can get right back to work if you
That's
want
right.
to.
Likely will.
Yeah, more likely. But I just, I want to make people aware the hospital is a big part of these. A lot of times the hospital has been at opening day of Montauk and down there having representation. They also usually have somebody, they will actually have ambulances out helping out with the road rally. And they do that, and of course, we want to thank them for all the work that they do with football games, and they work with the students, with our high school sports. It's a lot of that goes kind of under the microscope. Nobody even sees it. It's like where it's all setting on the foundation of our hospital, but a lot of the stuff that we do here in town is based on the foundation of our hospital.
Yep. Well, and that's why I'm glad that we're able to get it to the point where I feel really confident about where we're headed. Because I know it's and it's not just true in Salem. Rural hospitals all over America are a key to the health and vitality of their city.
Well, I know Salem Hospital is a big part of what we are here, and we really want to thank you for all the hard work that you have done, but also all the hard work that the entire staff has done. Because, as you mentioned, it's a team effort. It's not one person.
One person couldn't do it.
No.
One person could break it, but one person can't fix it.
And let's tip our cap to the board of directors too.
Yes.
They've had to have the foresight, and they're making some tough decisions they have to make. And it's not easy to sit there and just say, what you got to find out what's best for the hospital, what's best for our community. And the nice thing is you got local people on that board who get a good feel for what's best for the community, and they're not afraid to express that out in the meetings
Not a bit.
either.
Not a bit.
You'll get plenty of it. But Wayne, again, thank you for
Thank
coming.
you so much for letting us come in.
Wayne Reid, our CEO, our Salem Memorial District Hospital, or Salem Memorial Hospital. They're both right.
They're both right.
You can't go wrong with them. Anyway, but we thank him for coming in.
Much.
And if you have any questions about what you heard or you want more information, 729-6626. Call the hospital. They can get it for you. This interview brought to you by, I used to be able to talk years ago, Inman Insurance. And we want to thank Keith and his entire staff for helping provide these interviews and the interviews we get to do with the staff members that come in and with Wayne. And thanks again for Inman Insurance and providing that interview for the hospital. We really do appreciate that. Stick around. Civic Happenings coming up in a moment.
A better variety of music.